But first, this. It was the type of murder scene that law enforcement never forgets. 3 young boys, all brothers and all gone. Shot and killed execution style. One attempting to run away, but to no avail as the killer hunted him down. What would drive any human to commit such an act? To take 3 absolutely innocent lives in such a violent manner at their own home. But this alleged killer was no stranger. It was someone they knew, someone they loved, and someone they trusted, their own father. Now this father is facing the death penalty, but is claiming legal insanity, saying he did not appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct as he chased down and executed his 3 little boys. It's a defense we've seen many times, but usually with moms who kill their children. Mothers like Andrea Yates, who drowned her children, or Deanna Laney, who smashed her children's skulls with a rock. Is there a difference in the way our system treats mothers versus fathers? We'll bring in our experts as we investigate the tragic deaths of 7-year-old Clayton, 4-year-old Hunter, and 3-year-old Chase. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks for being with us tonight. This is such an incredibly tragic story. It is so sad. It is so heartbreaking. And at the same time, it'll get you extremely angry. We're talking about 3 little boys, brothers. Could they be any cuter? I don't think so. 7 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old, Clayton, Hunter, and Chase. 3 little guys who should have had an amazing life growing up together. When you're 3 boys like that and you're almost the same age, it is just absolutely amazing. Yes, it's chaotic, but it is awesome. And they should have had an awesome life. Their lives were taken all by one man. There he is, their father. Let me read to you what allegedly happened here before he took those lives. The defendant obtained a Bible and was walking around the house with it. While walking with the Bible, the defendant was mumbling, "Chad knows what's right." He then began to get into the gun safe, which was located in the master bedroom. His wife told the defendant that he was scaring her, that she didn't like what he was doing, and that she was going to call his parents. The defendant responded saying that he was just kidding and playing around. The defendant decided that he would lie down in the master bedroom. After he initially laid down, the defendant got out of bed, got into the gun safe, removing a Marlin Model 22 rifle and loaded magazine. What happened next was horrific, absolutely horrific. You think about what a young boy looks up to his dad and what he sees. He sees his hero. He sees the most important person in his life. I want to be like him. I want to be like my dad. After the gunshots, police responded. Their body cameras were on. Let's take a look at what happened. Where's he at?
He said, shooter's on the porch.
Get him right here, right here. You got him on the porch.
We've asked, that's the last place we've been told.
You show me your hands now! Stand up and walk towards us! Stand up now!
Rifle, do we know?
Walk towards us! Show us your hands now! Stand up! Stand up! Stand up! Stand up now! Stand up! Stand the up!
EMS to stage and air crews are going to go ahead and fly whenever any unit's going to die.
Get your hand over here.
72.
Come over 21. It's in the air.
There's got to be confirmed that there's people that need first aid, and that's the shooter who's not complying. They need to take care of the
I got it.
victims. They have to shoot him and shoot him.
And man, I ain't trying to hurt nobody. I'm completely sober. Never did drugs a day in my life.
21. Get the EMS over here.
Well, I did drugs when I was little, but I don't do drugs now. I'm sober. I'm not trying to fight you.
63.
Get your butt inside. Gatlin, get your butt inside.
We on primary?
Now.
29, we got 3 kids down.
3 kids down, 16 feet up.
Gatlin.
63, we're 21. Have EMS respond over here.
You're clear, they're being advised.
Robert 34, just started mass casualty response.
63, do you want them to respond to the Laurel Lindale address? Where exactly do you need them?
We're right in the front yard.
He took my life from me! My life!
What are you doing, man?
Hey, are you copying all this?
Can I roll over? I ain't gonna hurt you. I ain't gonna hurt nobody.
You got anything on you?
No, I ain't got nothing, man. Phone, that's it. I ain't mad. I ain't nothing. Just make sure that dog don't come out. I don't think he'll bite you. Just don't reach for him and try to grab him and pet him.
All right.
He won't bite you.
What's going on, man?
Nothing. Can I stand up? It's kind of uncomfortable.
I'm gonna get
I ain't
you
gonna
here
do
in a
nothing. I ain't
second.
running away. You can do whatever you want with me.
Here. You the only one else inside the house?
What?
You the only one else inside the house?
Yeah.
Sit down right here.
My daughter, she ran over to the fire department.
Sit down.
It's my stepdaughter.
Put him in the cage.
This is real.
I want to bring in our special guest, get a little more information about this story, this case. Breaking news reporter with the Cincinnati Enquirer, Cameron Knight, is with us. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start with the reaction and the impact of this story on the community when all of this happened.
Claremont County, where this occurred, is a little bit west of Cincinnati. It's a pretty rural county. And these boys were all baseball players. And they all were out in the community playing baseball with each other on different teams for their different ages. And it really rocked the community out there. The sister who you hear mentioned in the body camera you just played was a softball player too. They seemed like a really big baseball family, and it was they love baseball out there. And all these boys played, and it just really shook them. And this killing occurred just a few months after another really tragic murder-suicide situation in that county pretty nearby as well. And I think the combination of those two things really shook people up bad in there. It was really tragic.
Was there any history here? Do we know what was going on inside that household and perhaps the defendant's background? Was there anything that would even hint that something like this could possibly happen?
We spoke to some neighbors and some residents out there who nothing crazy and out of the ordinary. And a lot of the details of that are still very much under wraps because of the nature of this case and it being a death penalty case. They have not put out very many details at all. One of the neighbors said, like, oh, they are outside playing ball all the time. The dad was out there showing them how to fix cars and just having fun out in their yard where there were toys all over the yard, bikes and all kinds of things in the front yard there. And but another neighbor said, oh, they were always yelling at each other or having problems. So it's very, very preliminary and unclear. And the wife who survived and the daughter who survived are understandably not speaking out about what's going on. They don't want to compromise the investigation.
Yeah, hopefully they're getting some counseling and help as well, living through that and surviving that, but witnessing all of that. Procedurally, where are we in this case? What's the status?
So it's been over a year as this has gone on. Obviously, he was arrested the day of the killings, and there has been a lot that has happened since then. His confession to police officers in the interview after this happened was thrown out of court because he had asked for a lawyer and indicated he wanted a lawyer 2 times during the police interview, and they sort of didn't get him a lawyer right away. So his confession was thrown out. Then there is, under Ohio law, there is a law that says if you are suffering from a serious mental illness at the time of the offense, you can have a hearing. It's called a SMI hearing, serious mental illness hearing, which will take the death penalty off the table for the trial. So that's where we're at right now, is that they are preparing to go to this hearing, which is set to take place over the course of 3 days. So pretty giant for a hearing that's happening in the middle of a case. And that hearing will determine whether or not he was suffering from a serious mental illness at the time of these killings. And it will determine whether this continues to be a death penalty case or not.
Big
that
moment.
Hearing, again, that hearing is scheduled to start Monday.
Okay. Cameron Knight from the Cincinnati Enquirer, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and your reporting on all of this. By the way, folks, as you know, you can see right here, we are keeping an eye on deliberations in Florida in the Black Swan murder trial. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joins us from the courthouse with an update. Kelly, what's going on? Any movement inside that courthouse?
Hey, Vinnie, I just walked outside to talk with you guys on the phone. So I was just standing outside the courtroom here in Manatee County. And really what's just happening, no update from the jurors, just people are milling around, family members. I just talked with some of Doug Benefield's family members, and they're just waiting, and everyone just has the same questions. They're saying the same thing. What do you think the jurors are hung up on? So we'll have to see exactly what happens, but we do know that they've been deliberating now for several hours, nearly 5 hours, and they brought in pizza earlier and some drinks for the jurors, some soft drinks for the jurors. And so they're still here. They're still at it. And the people have said to us before, the deputies have said to us that sometimes this judge has allowed people to deliberate as late as 11:30 at night. So it's possible we're in for a very late night tonight.
Okay. I hope you ordered some pizza for yourself as well. Kelly Craft at the courthouse. Thanks so much. We're on a verdict watch. In the meantime, when we come back, we'll take a look at this case of this father took the lives of his 3 children. Will this be a death penalty case? We'll bring in our experts next.
I can't go into a whole lot of facts, all right, because this is a death penalty case, and my goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 little boys.
With how complicated the death penalty is in Ohio right now, and how much extra work it adds to your office, why was it important for you to seek this?
I'll let the facts speak for themselves. He slaughtered his 3 children in the most brutal fashion you could imagine, as I mentioned in court. The extra work is no extra work at all. It's what we do. This merits our attention, our devotion, and our effort.
For the Claremont County prosecutor, it's clear this is a death penalty case. This man executed his 3 young sons, one after the other. One of them he had to chase down and hunt down. There he is. But the question is, how will this play out? What will be the issues in this case? What's happening in Ohio? They have special laws. I need some experts to help me. So joining me, the executive director of the Atlantic Center for Capital Representation, death penalty expert Mark Bookman is with us. And joining us in Cleveland, Ohio, he's the guy I go to. There's a big case in Ohio. Got to go to criminal defense attorney Ian Friedman. Great to have you both here. Ian, let me begin with you. I want to understand Ohio and how this is going to work. There's this SMI, serious mental illness hearing that's going to be happening. What are the issues? What are the standards? How does a judge figure this out?
So good to see you, Vinnie. I'm sorry it's always with a tragic matter, but here in Ohio, so there's an opportunity to be heard. The law states that if someone was significantly impaired, they didn't have the capacity to exercise rational judgment, really couldn't appreciate the wrongfulness, which also sounds like an NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. But if you have that hearing and a judge determines by preponderance of the evidence, so not beyond reasonable doubt, but that the lower standard, that person really couldn't understand the nature of their conduct, they're exempt. They cannot be tried and subject to the death penalty. So life without parole, yes. Death penalty, no.
And as you said, it's similar to the actual defense. So, Mark, as we look at this case and we look at this guy, I mean, no rational person is going to do what he did, but that's not the standard, right? It's not about being rational. It's a much different standard when we talk about legal insanity and when we talk about what is necessary to try to prove a death case here.
So I think Ian, properly phrased it. You're right. No rational person would do this. So you almost start with the presumption that someone, is pretty seriously mentally ill for doing something like this. So Ohio is actually kind of ahead of the curve in the sense that the serious mental illness bar of the death penalty is very consistent with other bars that we see nationally. For instance, we don't execute juveniles. We don't execute people who are intellectually disabled. We don't do that is because they are less culpable. And so someone who is seriously mentally ill is less culpable in the same way. So Ohio has passed, what I would say is a progressive statute that recognizes the lack of culpability for someone who is so obviously seriously mentally ill, to me.
So, Ian, the public reaction to all of this obviously was outrage. There was sadness, there was outrage, there was anger. It's all jumbled together. We heard it from the Claremont County prosecutor as well. We always think about the death penalty and we think of the worst of the worst. And you think, well, what would the worst of the worst do? Well, the worst of the worst would hunt down and kill these three beautiful children. So what are your thoughts here about the death penalty in a case like this?
In a case like this is really hard because if you just take the conduct in a vacuum, there's nothing more imaginably worse than this. But there's no escaping the fact that part of this process has to include an assessment of the defendant's mental state. That's just, it goes part and parcel to the case, right? You have the act and then you also have to have the mental state. And so if we were only to judge it just on the conduct and didn't have to look at the why, well, of course, this would be an easy decision for anyone, any person of rational mind. But we have to figure out the why here. What caused this? Where was his mind? And this is an incredibly difficult case because on the one hand, jurors are outraged. There has to be accountability. Just like you said, Vinnie, who could possibly do this? But then jurors also want to believe that no one could be that evil to do this without some sort of something wrong, as they would say, some sort of mental disease. And so these cases really come down to an examination, an exploration of the defendant's mind. So it's going to be really expert intensive. Both sides are going to be bringing experts to the table to talk about what was going on up here. And then the jury's going to have to decide if it's going to get to a jury. It's just whether or not it's going to be for death or life. But they're going to have to decide whether or not how the mental state came into play.
Mark, we have about 30 seconds left here. I want to give you the final word on this. And what would you say to the public, in a case where everyone looks at this and says, this guy is the worst of the worst?
So I think, once again, Ian kind of nailed it. It's not just the worst of the worst crimes. It's the worst of the worst crimes coupled with, for lack of a better word, and I don't like to say this, the worst of the worst people. And when someone is seriously mentally ill, like this man, then I think most people would say the lack of culpability takes him out of the framework of the worst people. He's done the worst of the worst crimes, but maybe he's not the worst of the worst people.
Well, you guys are the best of the best. Mark Bookman, Ian Freeman, giving us great insight in a really difficult issue, a difficult case. Thank you both so much. When we come back, we'll approach this from a psychological aspect, look at some other cases like Andrea Yates. Are men treated differently than women, moms versus dads, in cases like this?
Can you tell how many people have been shot?
I think 2 children.
What did the female say to you? And she says that her stepfather is killing everybody in her house.
Show us your hands now. Stand the up.
EMS to stage and air crews going to go ahead and fly whenever any units can advise.
Get your hands up here.
He was their world. He was their guardian. And he executed them in cold blood. We know that from his admission. He planned the events of this day.
He knew what he was doing. He planned it. It was premeditated. He shouldn't have a bond. He should never see daylight again.
Judge, he has committed one of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortune to see.
The same way he did his son is the way he needs to go out.
He's not the first, he won't be the last parent charged with taking the lives of his children. We've covered a lot of these stories through the years, and many times the defense is legal insanity. Someone who cannot distinguish right from wrong, someone who doesn't appreciate the wrongfulness of their conduct, and that's exactly what's going on with this Ohio, and I use the term loosely, father, because he was at the time that he pulled out that .22 rifle and took the lives of those 3 little boys. As I said, not the first to be charged. So I want to go through some of the history here to give us some context for where we are in this case. Let's begin with Chelsea Thornton. Chelsea Thornton, fatally shot her 3-year-old son, drowned her 4-year-old daughter. Some psychiatrists found that she was in a, quote, depression-fueled psychotic episode that left her unable to distinguish right from wrong, the legal standard in insanity. She was eventually found not guilty by reason of insanity. We all know Andrea Yates. We remember this case, one of the highest profile stories of this nature, drowned her 5 young children, Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and Mary, all under the age of 7. This is back in 2002. Had been hospitalized multiple times for suicide attempts and self-harm, exhibited signs of postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and schizophrenia leading up to the killings, was known to also feverishly read the Bible during that time. In a retrial, Andrea Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Another case that was also in Texas, just like Andrea Yates, Deanna Laney took her 8-year-old son, Joshua, 6-year-old son, Luke, out to the yard and used a large rock to crush their skulls. This is in 2003. Also attempted to kill with a stone her 14-month-old son, Aaron, in his crib. He survived. She said that God instructed her to kill her children. Mental health experts from both sides found that she had psychotic delusions, leaving her unable to know right from wrong. Deanna Laney was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Susan Smith from South Carolina drowned her 3-year-old son Michael and 14-month-old Alexander in a lake in 1994, lied to police telling them her children were kidnapped during a carjacking. Defense experts diagnosed her with dependent personality disorder and major depression. The state argued in favor of the death penalty, but she was found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. Jeremiah Wright beheaded his disabled 7-year-old son in 2011. Mental health experts said Wright believed his son was no longer real and had been replaced with a CPR dummy. Jeremiah Wright was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Timothy Jones Jr. killed his 5 children, ages 1 to 8, in his mobile home in 2014. Later admitted that he forced his son to exercise until death, later killing the other 4 in a panic. The case file featured a history of physical abuse. The court rejected his plea of insanity. Timothy Jones Jr. is currently on death row. And one of the most horrific ones, John Battaglia, shot his 9- and 6-year-old daughters to death while forcing the mother to listen during a phone call. Prosecutors say he murdered the children in an act of revenge against his ex-wife. The defense argued against the death penalty, citing his bipolar disorder. The jury convicted him in 19 minutes and later sentenced him to death, and John Battaglia was in fact executed. So let's dive into this a little bit. Is there a difference in the way men versus women, moms versus dad are treated? Is there a difference? Joining us tonight, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert, witness, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Also with us, a clinical psychologist who's interviewed more than 80 murderers, including the Oxford school shooter, and Shonda Vander Ark. Dr. Colin King is with us. Great to have you both here. Dr. Carol Lieberman, your thoughts. Men versus women, mom versus dad, the way they're treated, the way they're perceived in our system of justice.
Well, you know, women are perceived, it's perceived as being worse for women, that for a woman to kill her child because she's supposed to be having the maternal instinct and so on. But on the other hand, a lot of women who end up killing their children have postpartum depression. So that acts actually as a buffer in terms of getting them, making it easier to get an insanity defense. Men kill their children in more, just like, suicide for themselves. They kill in general in more violent kinds of ways, whereas women most do it in more like drowning or like asphyxia or something like that, a quieter kind of way. I think, we do need to, there does need to be concession made for women who do have postpartum depression. In the case that we're talking about, that is a very complicated case because there are so many things that go into it. I'm sure we're going to talk about that more. But in dividing men and women and so on, it's not really so easy to just make it whether it's a man or a woman. It really has to do with the complicated story, how you can prove what their psyche was.
Dr. Colin King, I want to put something up on the screen here. Insanity defense with women. No crime is more likely to succeed with an insanity defense than a mother who has killed her children. No crime more likely to succeed with an insanity defense than a mother who has killed her children. What are your thoughts, Dr. Colin King, about men, mothers, men versus women, mothers versus fathers, in cases where children have been killed?
So thanks for having me on, Vinnie. So the legal standard is the same. So it does not discriminate between men and women. However, the perception is different. In the case of women, we instinctively go towards depressive episodes or maybe psychotic episodes or maybe postpartum depression. And in some cases, that is true. When it comes to men, we sort of lean more towards violence. We use words such as heinous crimes, brutal. All of these descriptors are used when it comes to men. At the end of the day, Vinnie, what we need to do, and as a psychologist, what we're doing more and more, we're starting to look at the brains of these killers. What are the motivating factors? You know, assess depression, assess obsessive compulsive disorder, assess empathy. And now with the advancement of science and technology, we're actually in a great position to start looking at the brains of these people and coming up with some answers that hopefully can prevent some of the future acts of violence, either based on aggression or depression or whatever term we want to give it.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, I want to put something else up on the screen, which is the sentencing disparities that are out there in moms versus dad, men versus women. The average sentence for women convicted of filicide in the United States was 17 years. Fathers are likely to receive much longer sentences than mothers who kill their children. Fathers are also more likely to be sentenced to execution than mothers. Why do you think this is?
Well, you know, it's kind of, there are some contradictory things. In one side, it's so hard, society, jurors don't want to believe that a mother could do this to her child because, as I was saying before, because of the maternal instinct, you know, but then that goes to, well, then she must have been crazy. You know, also, if you look at how, I think things are going to be changing because today, fathers, if they don't want to be fathers or don't want to have their children with them and so on, they more easily just leave the family. You know, I think that these statistics are going to be changing significantly over the years.
All right, Dr. Carol Lieberman, Dr. Colin King.